YouTube and Twitch are working with me, but I say we are live. And it's good to be alive. It's good to be alive here on a Friday with
Speak
all
for
of you.
yourself.
Oh, well. All right. We have one for and one, I'm going to say, undetermined. That undetermined is my guest, Cloud Cuckoo Country.
Hello.
Cloud, thanks for joining us.
How are you? Oh,
There we go.
no worries. Sorry, I should be better at being thrown to. I got bamboozled because I was bringing up so I can look at your chat. I was bringing up the stream as you were throwing to me with the hi, and so I heard two versions of you speaking at the same time and got bamboozled. So, hey, well, hello everyone.
Oddly enough, the exact same thing happened to me as I was arranging everything. I heard myself talking as I was trying to pitch to you. So I'm like, oh, that's me. And every time I think, is that what I sound like?
Whoops.
It's like,
Oh yeah, that fucking excuse me. I need to adjust my. I we had this conversation before, and I've already bleh. So I'll just go. So
no, don't go.
when I was like when I was like I want to say like 17 years old, I had that moment for the first time where you hear a recording of yourself and you go, "Oh my god, I've is that really what I sound like?" Because it was so different from how I thought. But weirdly for me is that at that age, I had way more of a British accent for no reason. So what was odd was that I expected to hear like a typical Australian and then heard a recording of myself and I was like, I'm British?
Does this mean people can outgrow being British?
Well, I don't know why I had a British accent at that age, but like, because my accent is like it's Australian, but it's what's called like the name of it is cultivated Australian, which is a stupid name. Excuse me, let me just turn off my phone. It's a stupid name because it implies that everyone who doesn't have the accent is uncultivated, which I do love the idea of, and sometimes I will call my peers uncultivated swine, but but like it's basically the Australian equivalent of posh British. So like in Britain, you got the Cockney accent, and then you have the Queen's English. And then in Australia, you have what's called strine, which is your typical like Aussie from the desert wearing his cork hat to keep the flies away. And then you've got cultivated Australian, which is what I speak. And the only reason I speak it is because I just learned to enunciate my words properly. So, like, cultivated Australian is just a regular Australian who pronounces words correctly. but but for some reason, when I was 17, I don't know if I was watching a lot of like British TV at that point or what, but I just discovered that I had like a posh British accent when I was 17 for no reason, which was more of a surprise to me than everyone else. Like everyone was like, "Did you not know that you were speaking in a British accent?" And I was like, "I didn't. I did legitimately did not know I was speaking in a British accent when I was 17." So I had that moment, but I never have that moment anymore just because I record myself so often. Like I spent about 2 years as a volunteer radio presenter, and so I just got used to hearing the sound of my own voice, and now it never happens again. So I'm just used to it now.
Hmm. I mean,
Not the British accent, just hearing my voice.
I still get used to my voice. Well, okay, I'm from America, so I'm used to sounding uncultured. In fact, I just as you have uncultured swine, I call my friends uncultured heathens.
Heathens.
Heathens,
Damn.
heathen. I don't know where.
America has like a wide variety of accents though. Like, you know, there is like the generic American accent, which I can never pull off, just because it gets exported everywhere. So even so in Australia, we get a lot of like American television being broadcast here, regardless. So we're all familiar and we're used to just hearing the generic American accent. But there's still the Texan accent versus the Boston and the Bostonite or whatever. I don't remember the names of places in America, but apparently you can tell where people are from based on their accent, which is not really something I think is an Australian thing. Like I don't recall that there's a typical like Queenslander accent as opposed to a Victorian accent in Australia. I'm sure there is. I just don't know it.
Well, honestly, I think hearing me talk, people can tell where I'm not from. Not from Texas, not from New York, but there's no such thing as a Coloradan accent, as far as I know. It's not like anyone will roll their eyes and say, "Oh, you're from there, aren't you?" I was like, I think, I think, what is it? The Red Wings. Red Wings fans are the only ones who will roll their eyes and say, "Oh, you're a Coloradan."
It's always the sports, isn't it?
Always the
We have
sports.
that. We have that stuff. Yeah, we have that stuff down in Australia too, where like people get really, really um, invested in like sports teams, and they're not even originally from the place that that the sports team they're barracking for is either. It's quite funny. Um, but yeah, we've got I actually so in Australia we have AFL, which is the Australian Football League, and the sport is called Australian Rules Football because we couldn't come up with a unique name. And like the entire country gets well from what I remember, I think it's actually less popular now. But when I was a kid, the entire country got really really hype for all of the football that gets played. But I fell out of that way earlier than I think most of my generation did because the team that was local to me was like the second to worst team in the league. So like they won once and then never again. Well,
You,
when I say one, they won the league once and then never again. They're not like they only ever won one game, but
I was about to say, it's we
yeah.
may be talking about different styles of football, but being the Denver Broncos for a good while weren't a team we're celebrating. Granted, they've done better. I got better, but they they were something of a joke for many a year. Even the Simpsons had their fun with us.
Huh.
Oh, the Denver Broncos. But real quick, I just want to give some.
Do you know it?
Oh,
Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to give some shout outs to folks in the chat who are return viewers. I see Prince
Okay.
Apollo and Preston Cox, Jude 3300, and Commodore Steele. Always good to see you. And Little Heart Raccoon and Enderpup. And let's see here. Over on the Twitch, I see Chris Blessings. Oh, always good to see you. Rainbow Hooves, River, and Helsing, and Blue Griffin. Good to see y'all. Thank you for coming. Oh, and yep, I just saw Champ to Stay. Sort of scrolling through the chat as I go. And hello, Lance Wolfstar. I like to just give a shout out to folks early on. Just let them know I see you. I may not uh, answer right away, but I do see you. And of course, my good bud Trinary, who's helping moderate the chat and swings by. Much appreciated. Oh,
Hmm.
and
I do have the
Thaddeus
chat
Swisher.
open, so I am seeing your messages.
Oh, and it's like Trinary waits until I say his name before he spoils me. Wait, if I pretend he's not there, does that mean the support goes away? I'm not going to test that theory. Andy, I'm sorry though I interrupted you. Uh, we were talking. I should clarify though. You
Oh, no.
say football, and in America we have this very distinct definition. But I think to most of the world, football is a game you actually play with your feet, i.e., sane.
Yeah. So in Australia, we also call that soccer, which is one of the weirder things because, like, our culture is kind of like this weird mix of influences from both Britain and America. So we call soccer soccer, but the rest of the world calls it football. But that's partly because we have our own version of football. Um, but we also play like cricket, which is like a British sport, and we play it in like the we play the other Commonwealth teams, and so we kind of just like to find excuses to hate on other nations. So like we think that the Americans are wimps because their football you have to dress up in armor to play and you have to wear a helmet, whereas like Aussie football oftentimes has more contact, but you don't wear a suit of armor to play it. You just put on a jersey and go, or whatever you call a jersey, singlet or something like that. Um, and so like whenever American football ever gets mentioned in conversation between Australians, everyone just starts laughing about how much of a wimp the Americans are. And in the subject of cricket, um, we just are like constantly making fun of the British, who we call the Poms. So I kind of realized something like very early on that in Australia, at least, sport is just an excuse to hate on people. It's like just throwing insults and making fun of people's nationality or background bare, barely acceptable by putting in the minimum amount of effort, the minimum amount of justification to make it barely acceptable to like hate on the British or the Americans as a group, which is like yeah, because like otherwise it would be a little bit like, hey, why are you making fun of us? That's not, that's a bit mean. But if you do it in the context of sport, then it's good. Then it's fine. Then it's acceptable.
Oh, we're like that, but we mostly do that during political seasons. Hey. Oh, Crimson Rain, thank
Ah,
you. Oh, yeah, we insult everybody, including ourselves. And somehow we're supposed to get along afterwards.
I do wonder. There was a because I back when I was doing my journalism degree, I kind of turned up to a press conference at one point. No, it wasn't a press conference. It was some kind of press event where they were actually talking. This was in 2016 when they were talking about the American election because that was uh, such
Horrific?
a thing. And yeah, yeah, yeah. I threw a question that didn't get an answer that I was happy with. Which my question was something like, even if uh, the Republican nominee doesn't win the presidency, there's still an indication that like he has this huge fan base. So how do we like, because we still have at the end of the day, you have to share a society with the other people in your society, even if you don't like them. Hashtag we live in a society. But like I was like, how do we like live harmoniously with these people and outside of elections? And that question didn't really get an answer because like I think a lot of people don't it doesn't actually occur to them that you do have to live harmoniously, and it certainly doesn't. And that this isn't like a sides issue. I would say that the other side fails to realize this a lot more, but sometimes it does just kind of slip your mind. I started on something, and I'm probably not. This is probably not a direction I want to keep going. Uh, because I'm trying to like not say anything too inflammatory because I know this is a casual stream.
Oh, I understand. And believe me, the struggle of how to put how do we work together? When do you admit it's okay to not work, not reach across the aisle? That sometimes something's so important that you can't, there can't be compromise. There are moments like that, and we've
Yeah.
been confronted by a lot of them, I think. Uh, but at the end of the day, I still think a diversity of viewpoints is a strength. It may not always feel like it, but in the long run, I do trust it's better to have many voices offering different ideas than one voice crushing everyone else.
Yeah, for sure.
But I will say,
Some opinions are just bad, though.
some not all opinions are created equal. On that we agree. And the start of this year in particular made it really hard to see where can we go together. It's gonna be a while, I think, before
Yeah.
we can find common ground again. But I don't mean to be pessimistic. Mostly, I just still think, dang, 2021, pace yourself. Even 2020 didn't try to be this hostile on the first month. Let's see here. How about?
That was a roller coaster ride for sure.
Oh, you ain't kidding. Got a question from Champ to stay here, and seems fitting as we've both chosen avian OCs. What is your favorite bird species?
Oh, I never really work out like a singular favorite because I think working out singular favorites are, sort of an exercise in futility because my tastes change so often. But some of my favorites include peafowl because I love huge, colorful tails. Um, Kookaburras because their laugh is exquisite and I hear it all the time. Um, Crows and ravens, the corvid family, because they are like supremely intelligent birds. Cockatiels, because you have to love cockatiels. I mean, come on. Um, Galahs, they are beautiful. Um, and wedge-tailed eagles, because they are majestic. They are the Australian eagle as opposed to the American bald eagle.
Wow, you've
I can't bring myself to love the bald eagle, unfortunately, because as a symbol, it's just kind of become very associated with like American nationalization, I guess, for me, because
mhm.
that's kind of how I grew up. Is like, the bald eagle is the American one, and actually I remember from my childhood, actually there were a lot of efforts to kind of like try and de-Americanize culture, but in these like really weird like propagandistic ways. So for example, when I was a kid, they really wanted to push the Easter bilby instead of the Easter bunny because the bilby is an Australian animal, right?
Mm-hmm.
But rabbits are a pest species in Australia. They actually do damage to our native environment, and so that plus them wanting to like sort of de-Americanize or de-Britishize the culture, they started writing these children's books about the Easter bilby that were just like the most like on the nose propaganda that you could imagine, where like the Easter bilby was this like patient, hardworking, like really cool kid who just did the job and cared for other people and hid little chocolate Easter eggs everywhere. Whereas the Easter bunny ate all the chocolate eggs and then took a nap and didn't care about anyone. Um, and like when I was a kid, it was kind of like a oh yeah, I love the Easter Bilby. But like by the time I reached the age of about 8, I was already kind of like that's a bit like silly. That's on the nose.
Although that raises a question. I'm a big fan that all storytelling involves a message. I really buy into the idea of the collective unconscious. But then someone talks about propaganda, and there's a guy named Jordan Peterson does classes on story study and analysis from psychological point of view. He also gets very heavy into politics that I don't always agree with, but I do like his classes. And so the question came up: what's the difference when it's a propaganda piece rather than a story? And I'm curious what your thoughts on that might be. What makes a propaganda
But
piece stand
when
out?
I called the Bilby story propaganda, it was less like me saying it was trying to push a political like agenda or a political party. It was more just like me exaggerating how how obvious and ham-fisted the message was, because like propaganda is never subtle about its messaging, right?
Hmm.
So like typically when we think of like art with a message, we think of like subtext or themes or something like that. But like if we think about propaganda, we think about like an in-your-face poster that says like vote for the red party. They're going to save the world. Don't vote for the blue party. They're all they're all stupid and evil and don't care about you. So like that's what that more so informed my use of the word propaganda rather than like, oh, it was trying to push a political agenda, which I like. The Bilby stuff was well, not politically motivated, but at least politically informed, but not like pushing for a specific party or ideology, right? It was just trying to like come up with a more like Australian and environmentally aware version of the Easter Bunny for Australian children, right? So, so it's not even no, it's not political in a sense. It's more just like sort of aware of various cultural or environmental issues, right?
Sort of a national identity effort.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Good.
Which politics is in everything to certain degrees, but like, so like, I'm not saying that it wasn't political, but what I'm saying is that like, it wasn't like about it didn't have anything to do with like the nuts and bolts kind of like which party do you vote for, which ideology do you ascribe to, kind of politics, right?
I think I get what you mean. Funny enough,
Yeah, yeah,
the Brothers Grimm, when they put together this collection of fairy tales which has made them famous around the world, they
yeah.
did it as part of a national identity, a romanticism effort. It's not all.
Was that
Hmm?
their intent, or because the way I heard it was that they were just collecting these stories to preserve them, but then later on they got used by others as a way to try and build the German national identity.
As far as I know, that was one of their motivations, not that particular identity, but they did want to create a sense of unity and a collection of stories, taking the oral stories and committing them to book form was a way to help everyone feel like they were a part of one country. And well, okay, my knowledge pretty much ends there. I don't know what else could have been involved, and of course, every good intention can be maligned or usurped by others. That's not fair. It just
Mm.
is. But I think I get what you mean. That it's you're trying to create something that feels more relevant to Australia. Something people say, "Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
know those." I mean,
Yeah.
okay, I know bunnies. They're not considered a pest species here, though people certainly, I think they can still cause trouble for farmers. But they're not as dangerous to the environment here as I think they are in Australia.
Yeah. Australia's kind of got this weird kind of environment where it's all just kind of like laid back. Like the reason why our country has so many invasive species is because like everywhere else your animals and plants are like cutthroat, right? They're the evolutionary competition everywhere else in the world is like, you know, down to the skin of your teeth, right? Like you go to like Africa and it's lions hunting zebras. You go to America and it's you know
Coyotes
some
and mountain
predatory
lions.
species in America hunting the buffalo or some whatever. I don't know about what natural wolves, I guess. But like in Australia, most of our carnivores are scavengers. Like they don't actually predate on animals. They just wait for the herbivores to die of like heat or dehydration because our continent is hot as hell. And then they're scavengers, so they feast on the carcasses of other animals, but not like animals that they themselves have killed. So all of our carnivores are scavengers. So they're lazy. Everything in Australia is lazy. And then the reason why we have so many pest species is because when the British came, they brought a whole bunch of other species with them to like make Australia feel more like Britain. And all of those species like just took over the areas that they were in, specifically because they were like cutthroat, evolutionary competitors that came to kind of this playpen of other species that were just like, hey, we just want to chill. We just want to chill.
Well,
It's quite
ask.
funny.
I have to ask then because, and I really don't want to be rude about this. A joke I often hear about the native creatures in Australia is
Yeah,
that
I've heard this one. Everything in Australia will kill you. But the
yeah,
the thing about that is that it refers to our bugs and insects that all just happen to have like venom that is like highly lethal to humans. And there's no reason for that. Like there's no reason why every other snake and spider has venom that you know will that will kill you like really really fast, but they just do. So in Australia you don't get killed by the wildlife in Australia because it eats you. It's because you're bigger than it and it bit you in self-defense. It's still like the laziest form of doing it because it's like I can't be bothered killing you, so here's some venom to do it for me.
it's some
So I'd say it's still pretty lazy, but like you can survive in Australia if you just leave everything alone. Like if you see a spider, just don't go near it. It owns that corner of the room now.
makes sense to me. Trapdoor spiders
Yeah.
give me the heebie-jeebies. Oh, but,
Mm.
though I love. Now I have this picture of a spider saying, "Take two bites and call me when you're mourning."
Nice. I haven't heard that one before.
I just cooked it up. I have a question from Kamodra Steele. Uh, do you know
Yeah.
about Smile? Smile, with a period after each one, each letter.
I don't know about that. If that's a brony thing, I haven't been in the fandom for years. I can't remember when I left. It was ages ago. Um, it was I think the start of it was season 5, episode 1 that I left. So, should I start on my spicy opinions?
Oh, by all means.
Okay, so I I was a brony I became a brony in between seasons 1 and 2, right?
Hmm.
And my whole thing was that I just thought that the show was cute. That's the reason I watched. Like I didn't care about the story. You know, it was just character. All these characters are cute, and they're cute ponies, and ponies are cute. And I like to watch cute ponies being cute. That's why I watch the show. So but people knew who I was because I was making videos back then, and they were still on books. So they like kind of that. So a few bronies in the the analysis community back then kind of thought like I got word that like me liking the show kind of legitimized the show's storytelling because I read books and books are better storytelling or some rubbish like that. Like some people started forming like opinions about like you know there's a guy who reads a lot of books who really likes the show and therefore the show has good writing or some rubbish like that. And I was very adamant that I thought that the show's writing wasn't that good, that I just liked the cute ponies. And this got sort of like this was like didn't make anything until like season 3, because season 2 everyone agreed it was good. And then season 3 came along and it split the community like you would not believe. But I was on the side that I liked season 3. I thought it was good because it was just more cute ponies being cute. And I didn't mind Alicorn Twilight. In fact, I thought it was probably one of the more interesting things to come out of the show. Um, in terms of where its story was going, which, I was like, it's not the best, but like it's at least interesting. It's an interesting development. It's an interesting change of the status quo, right? Which is what you want in stories. But like, if you remember the community reaction to um, Alicorn Twilight back then, people were like threatening to leave en masse. They were like, "This is the show jumping the shark. It's now not good. It's terrible." And like people were like, I'm done with MLP, and most of them weren't. Most of them got over it, but it was people got heated about like this, about like season 3.
Oh yeah.
And so and the analysis community at the time, I don't remember if you were part of the community at that stage, but the analysis community at that time was like split on did we think it was good or not. And so what I did was I got, because I got into an argument with somebody. I can't remember who it was, and if I did, I probably wouldn't name who it was. But like around, is was the show's writing ever good? And my opinion was the show's writing was never good. Y'all are just deluded. but I basically did a self-imposed challenge based on people telling me that the show's writing was good and that I should have standards for it. And so I applied the standards that I had for book writing to the show for season 4. And on Tumblr, I wrote a series of text reviews for each episode. And I did this kind of facetiously to be like, you know, I'm doing this to illustrate that what you guys are doing is really stupid. Um, and I deleted my Tumblr after some time, so I can't actually link you to what those text reviews were. But what happened is I ended up hating season 4 because I was specifically watching it to look for things to criticize and complain about. And there was a litany of stuff where I could just like go off and be like, this is terrible because X, Y, and Z. And some episodes I did genuinely like because they were genuinely good. But like by the time season 5 rolled around, I realized that I had kind of like released a genie out of a bottle, in that suddenly I was noticing every single bad thing about the show because I had primed myself to watch it, thinking to myself, know, about like writing standards, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up just like watching the show the whole time, going like, this is bad, this is also bad, everything about this is bad. And I was wondering to myself at some point, is it that the show is genuinely like has genuinely gotten worse since season 2, or is it that I simply have like started applying unreasonable standards to the show? Because I did genuinely have the thought for a fleeting moment, maybe the community is right and the show has actually gotten worse. But I kind of proved it to myself when I went back and tried to watch episodes from season 1 and 2 again, and especially season 2, because that everyone considers that to be the best season at that stage. I don't know if that's changed since then, but I found that I couldn't enjoy those episodes either. Like I found that I was watching like the best of season 2 episodes, the episodes that I remember loving when I first saw them, and spending the entire time just noticing every little nitpick that I possibly could, and ended up coming out of it going like, oh, this is terrible. But by the time season 5 started, I kind of realized that I had released a genie from the bottle and I couldn't put my critical eye back in the genie bottle. And so I had essentially ruined the show for myself by trying to hold it to the standards that people told me to hold it to, of like good writing and storytelling. So that's why my opinion of the show is the show has never been good. Y'all have just been, deluding yourselves the whole time. So that's my spicy take.
Oh, I delude myself every 10 minutes or so. Also, Dr. Hex Dex, thank you for following. It, it's weird. My view on the show has definitely shifted since I started doing reviewing. It was actually the conflict post season 3 that got me to do reviewing. I think I was at the very tail end of second wave of reviewers as a result of that. I mean, first wave, as I remember, was Digibrony and Tommy Oliver, uh, Give and Take, the T-Bat brothers. It was a small group. Then came the second wave, and that was your Firebrands and your Wolfies, Eliora and Sweetie Bloom and Anthony. Well, Anthony was really more part of the first wave as well. And I think yourself,
Yeah,
first wave
Anthony
reviewers.
was Anthony was out. Kind of. There were a lot of people who like got in really fast, who fell out really fast. Nobody remembers Paleo Steno, but technically he was the first Brony reviewer. But nobody remembers who he is.
I
But
remember
I
him.
do.
I do.
Oh yeah, but I think I was watching somebody who was talking about the Brony reviewers at some point, and they were like, you know, Tommy Oliver and Digibrony were the first Brony reviewers, and I was like, nobody remembers Paleo Steno.
Which is funny. I remember watching his videos as pretty much the only real input I had on the show. I don't do forums anymore. I don't like forums.
Forums, you have to be really, really invested into forums for it to be worth it. Like, it's just it's a large investment of your time and energy, because I have been on forums before, and they can be like really, really enriching places, especially for people who have a common interest in something. So like the last time I was really, really into a forum was for a competitive head-to-head strategy game where where the forums would organize tournaments. So that's how I got into it, because I was like, I really like this game. I want to, take my play to the next level. So I signed up with some tournaments, got my behind kicked, and then just spent more time like hanging out on the forums and discussing and talking and making friends, and it was actually really enriching. But the problem with it is that you have to kind of check in on forums every day, if not every other day, to keep up with everything that's happening.
Hmm.
And the and so I don't find myself with enough time, especially these days, to like really commit to being part of a forum community. Like that, like that. It's not that it's exhausting. It's just that it is a takes up so much amount of time. Takes up so much of your time. Like it's the same reason why I don't like play D&D is not because it's exhausting or it's too hard, but just because it takes up a lot of time to play D&D, and sometimes I would rather spend that huge amount of time doing other things.
I know what you mean. I've had to bow out of D&D campaigns because schedule just got so cramped. It's like I can't give 6 hours. It's just
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or heck, even when my friend David Silver would keep it limited to just 2 hours, it's like that's still a whole movie, and I can't do it anymore. I'm sorry. Uh,
Yeah, it's like because you've got there's only so many hours in the day, and so y- like I do like things that demand a huge time investment, but the more things you do with your life that demand a huge time investment, the less things you can find the time for if they take up that much time.
hmm.
So like if you do D&D and that's taking 6 hours out of a day every week, maybe sometimes twice a week. I know some people who play like in four separate role-playing campaigns at once, and not just D&D but like other role-playing systems too. So not only have these people like learned the D&D system, like read the rules, but they've learned other role-playing systems as well, and run or are in campaigns for each of them. And I'm just like, how do you have this much time? Like I have several hobbies, and I struggle to find time for D&D campaigns. uh, and they're doing like they're like fully invested. Like I usually suspect it's probably their only hobby other than the occasional video game.
I imagine the same. I mean, some people make whole YouTube channels and social media careers out of D&D, but D&D is still the focus. That's their
You can
main
make
thing,
YouTube careers out of anything though these days.
for good or ill.
Riddle of Lightning has tagged me on Twitter with their drawing things based on the stream.
Mm.
So one of them is me with the words Australia time, and it looks like I'm being bitten by or am holding a spider.
Well, I've got another one. Draws book. So,
Book.
book. I guess if you
Book. Oh yeah, I haven't talked about books yet.
book. Honestly, I've been wondering about
Book.
talking more about books on my own channel. I love MLP. This will slightly tie in. Dr. Hexdex donated, much appreciated, and also asked a question. Side note, Cloud, you are his favorite literature YouTuber, and I believe I'm.
I hope so. I'm the only good literature YouTuber, and I will stand by that claim. Point to me, a literature YouTuber who is good and not me, because there is no such thing. All of the book YouTubers who are not me are terrible.
Excellent. I will not contest this. No, no. Uh, but let's see
Well,
here.
I'm probably the only book YouTuber you watch, if you watch.
I poked around when I'm looking into something like, oh, Starship Troopers was a topic of interest for a time, and see people talking about the differences. But I digress. Uh, Dr. Hexdex wants to know, when did I get into the show? Uh, Hexdex got into it in season 2, but dropped it after about season 4. I, like yourself, Hex, and like Cloud, I got in just as season 2 was starting. Just then. And basically, I've stuck with it, but part of it was because when I got my first my first comic featured on Equestria Daily, seeing all this activity explode and then making a YouTube video and having it and having people respond to it, I grew to love the energy of the community. So here's the thing, uh, Clive, when you say that you watch and you're very critical, I get that. I totally see how. Okay, I ask myself, when is a kid show? It's a kid show. Is that when it's a legitimate tempering of expectations versus an excuse for bad storytelling? Because in my eyes, writing is important for all ages. You may not be able to hold everything to the same standard, but there's still a baseline. And sometimes I think MLP dipped below that baseline. Also, let's just see Riddle of Lightning. This is Riddle of Lightning's artwork for all who are interested. But mostly I enjoyed the community. I enjoyed going to conventions, and I've spoiled myself now. I can't go to a convention and just be there. I have to be doing something. I have to have a panel or make a presentation. Anime conventions cannot capture me the way they used to. I've been on the other side, man. I got red pilled. But I've stuck with it. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, with regards to the writing standards of a children's show, like I think that when we used to talk about this back in the day, that we were kind of like missing the forest for the trees, because like the way that I remember the conversations amongst the Brony reviewers would go is like, there's this tension between it's a kids show, you have to cut it some slack, with but don't children deserve good writing too, and when is and when is you know bad writing just bad writing, irrespective of whether it's a children's show or not. And I think that we sort of came at this the wrong way because we were too focused on like writing quality, whereas what we should have done is we should have tried to approach it from the angle of genre, because writing standards change depending on the genre. So I'll give you an example of that. So like in a let's say a fantasy novel, there's a really, really, really long opening where you meet a whole bunch of characters at once, and they don't even go on an adventure. They just hang around some dude's house, and they all interact in various ways, and they do have relationships and whatever, but like they're not really like doing anything that you would typically associate with a fantasy adventure. You might describe that as boring, right? I picked up a fantasy novel to read a fantasy adventure. Why am I just reading people hanging around one location, going over minute details that I don't care about? But if instead I told you it was a mystery novel, then your expectations might change. Suddenly, this long, protracted sort of introductory sequence where everyone is, sort of just interacting, and, seemingly irrelevant details are described. Suddenly you're like, actually, I'm paying attention now because I know it's a mystery story. This isn't droll, boring, stuff. This is setting up clues for later. Some of these details that I might think are irrelevant now, they might actually be red herrings, but they might also be clues for the later mystery that gets established off. And you might be like trying to work out, even at that stage of the novel, who's gonna die and who was it who done the murder. So you can have sort of the same setup, but because there's a different genre, the genre kind of informs you how you're supposed to think about the the material, in terms of, judging its quality. Like what is boring in one genre or silly in one genre might be perfectly acceptable in a different genre. Um, and I think that you can sort of use this as a way of informing how we think about, children's media in terms of quality. That rather than thinking of it in terms of like, oh, we need to try and assess the genuine, like, objective quality of the writing in this children's show, instead you have to kind of like look at the genre of, or look at children's genres, like, you know what is like, you could treat children's adventure show as a genre separate to a regular adventure show, or children's slice of life drama as being a distinct subgenre from a realist adult slice of life show, say. And you can then start saying stuff like, what are our expectations of this genre? What does the audience care about? And also, you can sort of subdivide the audiences. So you can be like, what do adults expect from this genre versus what do kids expect from this genre? Because, and of course, you'd need to actually like go and ask some children and like, try and get a bead on what they care about in terms of that. And then you can, come up with probably a more accurate assessment of quality, but also from multiple angles, so that you're not trying to kind of like distill the objective quality of a show when this, show is part of a genre that has its own standards and also has different standards for its different audiences, that, or its different audiences hold it to different standards, that the adults in the audience might hold it to a separate standard from the children in the audience, say. So that's kind of like my take now, is that I think rather than trying to like assess the objective quality of children's shows in terms of writing, that if you treat it as its own genre, that it's a lot more of a useful discussion at the very least.
Although it's funny when you talk about understanding why it appeals to kids. I was having dinner with, this was 2 years ago at least, maybe three, a dinner at an old high school friend's house. He is now a father of two, a son and a daughter. And by sheer luck, I had brought gifts of his daughter's two favorite Disney princesses. And I asked her, "Oh, what do you like?
Huh.
What do you like most about the Disney princesses?" Because in my head, I was like, okay, I'm talking about. I was going to do a presentation about princesses and what they signify in culture and yada yada. And she said, "Sparkly and pretty."
Huh.
And I just thought, okay, yeah, that's valid. I mean,
Yeah, it is.
that's as far as it goes. I will say, I always hope that, like, sure, a princess can be pretty and sparkly. I hope there's something of more substance that the kid might not realize at the time, but look back on down the road. So,
I
I get.
certainly, I certainly think that, I certainly think that people tend to get better at articulating their own thoughts and feelings as they grow older.
That well that no, that's also true. That might have been the best answer she could give, but it might have been more than I realized. At the same time, if it starts and ends with pretty and sparkly, I mean, who am I to say that's invalid?
Yeah.
I'm a guy with a YouTube channel. Gosh darn it, that instantly makes me smarter.
Yeah, but well, I mean, I can fully understand like enjoying something for shallow reasons. Like, I am a furry YouTuber, so like, furry is the definition of style over substance. But but like the what but like there are sort of like multiple things that you kind of need to consider about the opinions of children. The first of which is that it is perfectly legitimate to enjoy something for shallow reasons. Like there are certain, like, I enjoyed My Little Pony for shallow reasons. Like I said earlier in the stream, the reason I enjoyed the show is because I wanted to watch cute ponies doing cute things. That was the beginning and the end of the appeal for me. But also that sometimes people do have complex reasons for enjoying things. They just can't articulate those reasons because they don't have the language yet.
Hmm.
And some people never develop the language too, but that's fine. You know, just because you can't articulate complex feelings doesn't mean you don't have complex feelings.
Oh no, I never
Um,
want to dismiss kids having emotional depth and, well, startling intelligence.
I mean, one of my frustrations as a kid, like I was a more articulate than usual child, but even back then I was constantly struggling to like articulate what the full extent of my thoughts and emotions were, like even when I was in single digit age. Although a lot of that memory has kind of faded. Mainly like, my mother occasionally tells me stories of like, I remember when you were just a child and you did this and this happened. And then it sort of like mixes with my hazy memories of what happened back then. But apparently, so I'm led to believe and also slightly remember, that one of my biggest frustrations that I was able to articulate as a child is it seems like adults just don't understand children. That was something that I apparently said when I was single digit years old, probably 9, closer to the tens age. But like kids do have complex frustrations, and sometimes they just can't articulate them. Yeah.
Hmm. I don't know if you ever watched a guy who does reviews by the name of SF Debris.
Never heard of them.
Hmm. He did a video of Lilo and Stitch, and the way he talked about the little girl, wow, well,
Lilo.
Lilo, yeah. What am I saying? Uh, he talked
So he
about
did a review of Lilo and Stitch, and he talked about the
the
little girl character and the blue koala,
the
whatever their names are.
exactly. It's like actually blue koala is a fantastic way to describe Stitch, but in talking about Lilo, he talked a lot about child psychology, and he went through. I'm not gonna say he picked apart, but he went through some of Lilo's actions, which seem so baffling and random. And all of a sudden, he puts it in this context that it's suddenly, it's like a whole new aspect of of the movie got unveiled. Uh, because he had taken the time to really look into child psychology. Maybe an actual child psychologist had talked about this, but he really treated the whole thing with a great deal of respect and insight. I thought, wow, that's excellent. How can I steal this?
Well, I mean, Lilo is one of the few Disney child characters who actually acts like a child. Like, um, and in addition to that, is a complex character in her own right. Like, she doesn't just like throw temper tantrums and be like, I want this, but she does like there's one moment that always sticks out to me, which is when she and her older sister, from memory, her name is Nani, when Lilo and Nani are fighting, and Nani's trying to like grab Lilo and like get her under control, and Lilo like a uh, a grip by like drooling on Nani's arm, and
Truly.
I was just like, yeah, kids do that.
Well, they yes they do. There is no tactic too disgusting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But the point is that she does like has the outward behavior and also inner complexity of a feasible feasible child character, I would say.
Hmm.
One of the best that Disney has output. I haven't watched Disney movies in a very long time.
Nor I, but yeah, I still sometimes if it's a reviewer who I think brings something extra to the table than just the immediate reaction, which we all have. Uh, I find I check them out even if it's a show I haven't watched yet, which leaving
Yeah.
myself open to spoilers there. Uh, let's see here. Goja Lion 91 has a question for us both. Would you be interested in seeing creatures that are a mix between mythical beasts and dinosaurs? Huh. Honestly,
Sure.
honestly, that was what dinosaurs were. Dinosaurs were sort of my introduction to dragons.
Dinosaurs may as well be mythical beasts, you know, as far as everyone's experience is concerned. Because, like, yes, they did genuinely exist, but they're also so far removed from, like, what the world is today that, from our perspective, they may as well be mythical creatures. So I would say that dinosaurs themselves are kind of like they're more like grounded in evolutionary history, but they are still, you know, of that same genre, I would argue. Um, However, I will say that you know, combining like mythical creatures, like say dragons or hydras or griffins or whatever, with dinosaurs sounds like it could be a mess. But I have always held that like it's the job of character designers to make stupid ideas look cool, because there was a point I remember this being like, do you know about feathered dinosaurs discourse? Because when scientists came out and started going like, actually dinosaurs had feathers, they were, you know, adorned in plumage, and everyone was like, oh, you're making dinosaurs less cool. My take on that was, no, the job of scientists is not to make the dinosaurs look cool. It's to accurately describe the dinosaurs as they were. The person whose job it is to make dinosaurs look cool is character designers. So really you should be going to them and saying, "Hey, dinosaurs have feathers now. Make that look cool." And an example of that is, so I occasionally play Magic the Gathering, and Magic the Gathering had a dinosaur themed set called Ixalan, where they actually leaned into feathered dinosaurs, and so all of the dinosaur creatures in the Ixalan set of Magic the Gathering had feathers on them, and the character designers and the artists stepped up to the challenge and actually made them all really, really cool. And they still looked incredibly vicious, very intimidating, very classically like Jurassic Park dinosaur, but they also had feathers. So they were able to take that prompt, dinosaurs with feathers, and make them look like, you know, how you would want a dinosaur to look in pop culture. And so character designers are talented people who should be given every prompt ever.
I'm with you there. I mean, I love when a movie or a game comes out. I love to get the art book just to see all the character design ideas that didn't make it in, because even those look awesome. I mean, granted, some. I mean, I don't know if you ever saw the My Little Pony movie. The
I did not.
Okay, there there was this town populated by anthro characters. It was very different aesthetic to what we've been used to. Diamond Dogs notwithstanding. But then I looked at the concept art, and it was this hugely detailed sketches that looked something more I would expect for a Lord of the Rings style story or a video game with all this detail. And it would be simplified for MLP, but the concept art was, I thought, stunning. And I love seeing that these folks come up with the ideas first, then worry about adapting it to the show's aesthetic. So I'm right there with you, celebrating character designers. Let's see
Oh
here.
yeah.
I am going to wait.
Also,
Oh,
I might be a little bit biased because like character designers are like 90% of the furry artists I know.
yeah, there you go. Hey, it's I'm biased in favor of character design as well, and environment design. Let's see here. Dr. Hextex donated again. Thank you, but you don't. I'll say you don't need to donate to ask a question. I appreciate all the support, but I don't want to make that a requirement. If YouTube didn't work out for you, this is addressed to us both, what would your backup be?
If YouTube isn't working out for me, I don't use YouTube to make money. Like it's not a job for me, it's a hobby, because it's nowhere even close to profitable. But I will say that, like, one of the reasons why I can afford, like, to have uh video editing software, and to have the many images of the bird that I have drawn for my videos, is because I am a freelance video editor for the time being, and so I can sort of justify that cost. Um, and at least for the video editing software, the bird drawings are a bit of a self-indulgence that I only use for me. But like, if I wasn't a video editor and I also didn't make enough money to justify spending that much money on a hobby, I probably would, like, pass it back a little bit to be like, what can I do with only free software, and less drawings. But like, sort of what I'm doing now is I'm doing freelance video editing as my income, but I'm also doing a psychology degree, because that's probably what I want to do long term. And yeah, but YouTube is not like a thing for me, that I'm trying to get into as my, like, as a source of income, or as a job, or anything like that. I don't even think it'd be sustainable for someone like me anyway, because the algorithm hates my channel. Like, it's a literature channel, and it's furry, and it's also got long videos that go really in depth on topics, and it also doesn't upload very frequently. So, like, the YouTube algorithm just doesn't promote my videos. So I'm probably never making a career out of YouTube.
Funny enough, I think I'm in a similar boat. There was a time where I thought, hey, this is really going. Maybe I could do this full time, but that's changed. I don't upload very often, and I do longer videos that are usually more in depth on topic. Funny thing is, the algorithm, I think, used to like me because bronies were hot and new and unexpected,
Yeah.
and now not so much. My friend Josh Firebrand, he said we kind of got spoiled on the popularity. You got to keep doing new things, but I don't really like the idea of chasing the algorithm. Doing something just to get YouTube to notice me, senpai. I like to talk about things I enjoy, and if it requires long format, well, that's part of the fun in my eyes. And you can note one point, my subscriber was on the cusp of 120,000. Now it's dipped down to 116. I've had YouTube unsubscribing people, or people have just lost interest, or any number of reasons. Point is, I'm here, and I'll keep producing for the people who choose to stick around. That's the long and the short of it. And the support I get from folks who donate on these streams, or support me on Patreon, that all goes back into after the fact. I have a day job. I work as a pre-press graphic design worker. I hesitate to use the term specialist, but that's my day job. That 7 to 4:30 each day, and yep. and I only
Yeah.
get and I really only get like 30 minutes at lunch to maybe work on a background or a script or some such. I do get my office mates do serve as a test audience for some of my videos, but it all
Oh yeah.
basically boils down to if YouTube didn't work out for me. Well, okay, it's not a career for me right now. But if it went just done, finished, gone, I'd be sad. I'd have probably have a little period of, oh, well, that was fun but also painful, and now it's done. But then I'd get back to, I think I'd devote my time to writing. I've spent a lot of time talking about other people's creative work, but there's a point where I want to put my own out there more than just a video review, something original and me.
That
So
is also something that I want to do as well. Although for some reason, what's weird about me is that every creative kind of has a novel that they're working on, right? Like
it is sort of a
because
cliche.
well, because but the reason for that is that writing is like one of the lowest like commitment forms of creativity that there is because it's just putting words on a page, right?
Mm.
And I keep telling people that like writing is way harder than you think it is if you want to be published. Like yes, writing stuff that's just for you is low commitment because you're just putting words on a page and that's easy. But like writing for an audience, the level of time and detail and skill escalates so fast, so high when you're doing it, you know, when you're trying to do it professionally, or even if you're not trying to do it professionally, even if you're just doing it as a hobby, but if you have an audience who you are writing for, and it's not just something for you, it's very difficult. And I can attest to that because I've been in, multiple bits where I'm writing for audiences in various ways, including like articles for magazines and the YouTube thing, articles for online, um, and yeah, it's more work than it looks like if you're just reading the words in the finished product. But like the reason I was sort of bringing up the novel thing is that like it's sort of a cliche that every creative has a novel that they're working on, and you would think that I would because I talk about novels all the time on my YouTube channel, but I my creative thing that I've got running in the background is actually a game.
Ooh.
I have a million game design documents just saved on my computer, and I have playtest versions of several games that have progressed past the design document stage into actually being like something that I think is reasonably good. And I've actually gotten friends together to like play my playtest version of games. I found Tabletop Simulator is really really good for making playtest versions of things,
Mm.
and there's been a few where like ideas have started to coalesce, but like the I do think it's funny that like out of all the creatives who you'd expect to have a novel going on in the background, mine is actually I'm trying to design games instead.
I think that's wonderful.
Uh,
So, I hear what you're saying about books, be writing a novel or just a book. Not sure if there's a real distinction for people. Uh, it's low commitment until
well, book
you
book
act.
book encapsulates non-fiction. So like a high school textbook is also a book, but a novel is like it has a story in it.
Well, how does it describe? Uh, I get what you mean, that it's low commitment if you're doing it just for funsies. Once you get an audience, though, I don't know. Like, two of my favorite authors are Orson Scott. No, no. Okay. George R. R. Martin. George R. R. Martin and Patrick Rothfuss. Rothfuss. There we go. But neither of them has produced a work, or at least the sequel that I want, in several years. And I've realized, oh, you know what? It's probably really stressful to have to suddenly write for a dedicated audience. So I shouldn't get
Yeah.
upset. But darn it, I want to know the sequel to A Wise Man's Fear. You know.
I actually have an upcoming video where I'm. It's a writing advice video, sort of,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm doing a close reading of one of the best books I know, and there's a bit in it where I'm talking about like that. Uh, a lot of writing is just, or a lot of editing, I should say, is just wrestling with the law of diminishing returns. You know what I mean? Because like, and this goes for every type of creative project. That like, you know, unquestionably, the more time and effort you put into something, and the more time, especially, that you spend ironing out the details, the better your thing is going to be. But so theoretically, you could just keep working on the same thing forever. But like the law of diminishing returns basically says the longer that you continue to put effort into the same thing, the less efficient that effort is going to be. So like if you've just got a rough draft and you're like, I'm going to go back and I'm going to iron out the details of this rough draft, you're going to improve it a lot. And it's going to be a lot better than your rough draft. Then if you go back again a second time and you go, let's go through this again and let's iron out some more details, it's still going to be improved quite a bit, but not as much as it was from the rough draft. And then the more you keep going back again and again and again, the less improved over the previous version it is. And so at some point, you have to think, well, I could go back again and continue ironing out details, or I could just move on to a new project. And my effort is probably going to be better spent on that new project. So, like, I get that a lot of creators, especially the ones with ginormous audiences, want to make sure that their work is like perfect. But A, it's never going to be perfect. And B, sometimes just calling it done and moving on to the next thing is the correct thing to do. Because, you know, the law of diminishing returns says the longer that you spend on it, the less valuable each bit of your effort is.
Hmm. Well, it's funny. Honestly, it's kind of funny you mentioned that, as I'm about to switch over to a art piece I've been doing for several weeks, and I probably should finish it up too. Law of diminishing
Several
returns.
weeks is not like a long time to spend on something. My last video, I put a lot more elbow grease into the visuals, and it took me like a month or a month and a half to like actually properly edit the whole thing.
Well, even so, I should be. I hope folks remember Iceberg's Sky Striker, and I do want to honor his support and, oh, shouldn't assume, but Iceberg's support and get this going. But I spent a dang amount of time putting together the train station setting. But let's see here. You know, now that I know Champ to Stay is back in the chat because it had to go away. First off, Champ, I so appreciate your comment that you'll stick with me throughout. I greatly appreciate that support from everyone. But I believe that it is Champ who likes to ask, uh, do you watch Tom, or do you at least know of Thomas the Tank and Friends?
Sorry, did you say Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends?
Yes.
I have not thought about Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends since I think I was 5 years old.
Aha, but you did watch it.
I did watch it, but I have not. It has not entered my mind since I think I was 5 years old. That might be an exaggeration, but like, I have not thought about it in a long time.
Ah, but you're thinking about it now. See, everyone, you've just witnessed Silverception. Dun, dun, Barta. Loud
You've broken
noises.
my you've broken my at least 2 decades long streak of not thinking about Thomas the Tank Engine.
Well, there you go. That's my genuine accomplishment for this evening. Uh, I don't know how to feel now. Can I top that? I'm still proud of that spider. Call me when you're mourning, but all that good stuff.
Oh yeah.
But it that is one of the consistent questions we get of our guests. It's always interesting. Most of the time, I get people saying, "Oh, I was too old for that show," or "I missed it." I was like, "Wow, I I hang out with I rarely hang out with people of my age. I've always made friends with people who are older than I or younger, and I'm not sure why exactly."
I'm starting to transition into the age where everyone starts mysteriously being younger than me. And I'm not used to it yet because what I'm used to is being the youngest person in the room, right? But like I'm 26 now, and there was a point when I realized that like about half of my friends are younger than me by at least a year. And I started getting a bit like, oh god, I'm actually now becoming the old one. Yeah.
Which,
It used to be I was the young one. Now I'm, transitioning into being the old one.
funny enough, that actually transitions into a question from Preston Cox from early on in the stream. Preston asked, "Are you really an old man?" I turned 40 last December. I consider myself an old man. Meh, get off my lawn.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
even
People overestimate my age. I've had a bunch of people who like think that I'm in my 30s or 40s even based solely on my voice because I have, a reasonably deep voice, I guess. But like, so occasionally I'll have some fun where I just mention my age in my videos. So like, so like the most recent one was when I joked about oh, I don't usually like young adult fiction, and then said something which then transitioned into me yelling into the microphone. I've never sounded like more of an old man in my entire life. I'm 25, and got a bunch of comments of people saying, "You're only 25? I thought you were 40." So I do like having fun with that sometimes.
well, I don't know what people expect of me, but usually it's more people are surprised or disappointed by how I look. They think, "Oh, I thought you'd be, something more Antonio Banderas meets Enrique Iglesias or Fabio."
What?
Yeah, people
Blimey.
don't expect me to look the way I look.
Most people on the internet with an opinion look like nerds. Like, that's
Yep,
just what we look like.
yep.
Like, just imagine a nerd. That's probably what we look like. Except me, I look fabulous.
Fabulous. Although, what? I'm trying to recall. Archer. I don't know if you've ever watched the TV show.
No.
Hmm. Okay. Well, there was
It's
a.
it's hard for me to it's hard for me to get into TV shows. So if it's a TV show or a movie, I probably haven't watched it.
Well, you don't really need to know anything about the show except that for like a extra on a DVD or maybe a convention, they did a video where the lead character, who has a very tantalizing voice, he's in an accent and now he looks like his voice actor, who they're poking fun that he is sort of the polar opposite of this suave spy that they're trying to portray, and it's just him lamenting his lost looks because he completely resembles his actual actor now, and it was just hilarious
Huh.
to see. Maybe a little. I appreciate that the voice actor was a good sport about it all, but dang, it's like, dude.
Hmm.
But it really only works if you're familiar with Archer. Let's see here. T Marsh is asking, do you guys have a least hated song? It's like, so
Le-
I'm guessing it's a song we.
out of what criteria?
Well, I'm assuming that by least like the question is there a song you don't really enjoy but you don't mind if it comes on, whereas there are songs that just kill you on the inside as they when you hear that first note.
Oh, there is one song where back when I was 18 years old, and I was working in a supermarket. That supermarket would not play the designated supermarket radio station, which it did have, because stores like to play music in the store, right? Um, but because there are laws around when and where you're allowed to play music in public, you need to get a license if you're going to be playing so copyrighted music in public. And so the store chain that I worked at had its own radio station, which had a wide variety of songs. So, like, when my manager actually played that, it would play like this huge playlist of songs, throughout the day. And when I was working there for 8 hours, maybe I'd hear the same one or two songs twice, but that would be about it. But at some point, most of the time, I should say, my manager didn't play that. They played one of the commercial radio stations. Now, the thing about commercial radio stations is that some of them will legitimately just have a playlist of like 12 songs that they will just play over and over and over and over and over again, because they do not expect that their audience will be listening to them for multiple hours at a time. What they expect is for people to be listening to them in their car to and from work,
Hmm.
or whatever, whenever they're in their car. Um, and so people are only listening for maybe half an hour, maybe a full hour at a time. So the commercial music radio stations will just have a playlist they play over and over and over again. So if I'm working there for 8 hours, sometimes I would legitimately hear the same song playing like five, six, seven times. And the song that got absolutely ruined for me, so this isn't my least hated song, this is my most hated song, is Can I Blow Your Whistle, Baby, by whatever that guy's name was.
Oh
Because
yeah.
every time I heard it, I was just like, why is this on the radio? It's clearly a song about doing naughty things in the bedroom. It's not even subtle about it. It's playing in the middle of the day. There are children in this bloody, supermarket, and and also I have to listen to it, you know, so many times every day that I come into this thing. It ended up being the thing that I dreaded most about going to work. Like, you think about, like, when you just think to yourself, "Oh my god, I don't want to go to work." There are certain things that you think about. Like, I hate my boss, my coworkers are mean, the work is repetitive and dull. There's this one trolley that I hate that I always get stuck with that has a wheel that squeaks or something like that. Mine was, I really just don't want to listen to that song another six times today. It was that. That was what I was thinking when I was thinking to myself, I just don't want to go into work today.
Funny enough, I have a similar experience. So when I worked at our airport at one of the stores, and the worst one was on the C concourse because nobody visited there. I mean, I describe it. C concourse is like that's the weakest concourse. It's the least active airlines hang out there. It's where you put the groups you don't like. So, and they had this music kiosk, and every day and every less than an hour it loop around, and the first song was uh "Let's Get It On." Oh god, that was awful. My impression,
Oh
that
yeah.
is. I just did the music incredible disservice. I can hear the entire music industry cringing. But I would hear it and I'd just be like, why is this being played? And it would get to the point where I would know it was coming and I'd actually skip ahead to the next sample because no one else was there. But I couldn't stand it. But I guess that's not a least hated. That's more just a very frustrated.
Mm.
It's funny. I mentioned this last stream. I think there are certain songs where I really like the song, but then my brain starts to pick up on how deep a breath the singer takes before they belt the next verse. And if it gets too much,
Uh,
that's all I hear. So there's this song called "I Will Love Again," and I really liked it. I thought it was energetic, it was hopeful, it was, yeah. I heard it on the radio a lot, but I just really liked it. And until one day I started realizing, did I ever tell you of how you live in me? And I couldn't hear the song anymore. It's like I like the song, but I need to like edit out all those breaths.
yeah.
Oh, whoa.
Oh, I had this absolutely like terrible period where I was when I was editing the audio for my last video, because I have reasonably good headphones and a mic that picks up everything. Um, I kept hearing all of like the spit sounds that my mouth makes when I talk.
Oh yes.
Like you know what I'm talking about. Like you hear the little wet sound, like
Oh yes. Oh, it gives
that kind of thing. Just sort of embedded in your uh, speech, right?
give me the
And like not
Ghiblies.
not not that yeah, not that obvious, but when you've got headphones on and you're actually like going in and editing the audio, you can hear that stuff. And I started getting obsessive about eliminating all of them. And so I would re-record them multiple times to try and get rid of them. I would try using audio tricks to get rid of them. But I had become so attuned to hearing them after eliminating them from my audio that I started hearing them in everyone else's audio. So I would go to my friends' videos and listen in, and like, oh my god, I can hear every single mouth noise that is happening while they're talking. Every single like errant piece of spit is being picked up in my ears, and I realized that that kind of stuff is actually everywhere, and that I did myself a disservice by attuning my ears to listen for it. So now I can't unhear it. Well,
I've
I did eventually unhear it. That's not true, um, but it took me a while to unhear it.
Well, honestly, I share that. Mostly, I just think to the person, back off the mic a little. Stop trying to swallow it. Although
That doesn't actually help. At
uh,
least not in my experience.
although funny enough, I forget where I read this while looking into it, but apparently having a green apple, not red, green, dries out your mouth and reduces the spittle.
Huh.
I have not
Weird.
tested this
Although I've
theory yet.
heard I've heard that having a dry mouth can actually make it worse.
Hmm. Maybe it
Like
increases
like
the.
like uh, like apparently there's this sweet spot in between dry and wet that that where your mouth makes the least amount of spittle noises. But if it's too dry, you apparently get dry spit noises. and if it's wet, you get wet spit noises.
And
And like the dry ones, I'm told that people hate the dry ones more.
I'm sorry, but all of a sudden I feel like we're in an After Dark. Talking about that sweet spot between wet and dry.
Dry and wet.
Oh
Now.
my.
Yeah.
Oh, I am juvenile. You can turn a certain number of years, but that don't mean you're mature.
Do you have a soundboard?
I have a sound. I have two actually. There's only 16
Okay.
sounds for each, but they come in handy. I mean, when you see someone you like, or someone you don't.
Goodness gracious.
Or you get the wrong answer. Or someone likes what you said.
One of my friends bought a soundboard. I don't know if they've ever used it.
Well,
Actually, they probably use it when doing D&D, and I just don't hear it.
well, I did use one of these with a D&D session, and the characters were asking, "Where's that coming from?" Like the actual characters in the game.
Oh yeah.
So I was like, "Well, I just gone meta."
Breaking the fourth wall or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I gave them a bright idea, but they didn't pay me for it.
Bloody hell.
Oh boy. Let's see here. Now that let's see here. Questions. Just doing a little scanning for the questions. Let's see here. Oh, nope. We just answered that one. Oh,
I've got a question. I've got a question for you.
Oh, please go ahead.
What are some of your favorite novels?
My favorite novels. Well, okay. But here's the thing. I'm going to list some favorite novels, but the funny thing is I've had a lot of practice with loving the author's work and not agreeing with the author. So when I say I'm a Harry Potter fan, I've been banging my head against a wall over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
By a similar notion, I love Ender's Game. In fact, one of the first times I worked with Cloud is when I took Bloody Forever to get him an audio piece.
I remember that.
I was hoping you wouldn't, but I just sabotaged myself. I took forever to get my audio to him. But we did a commentary on Ender's Game, and I still love that book. I still think it's a phenomenal, unexpected. You hear science fiction, and that's one of those things that's not defined by the genre, but is just really fun to read. So that's one of my favorites. I'm trying very hard not to go with what everyone expects. Like, well, okay, I do love the Harry Potter stories. First one I read was The Chamber of Secrets. I was a rebel and started on the second. But
I think a lot of people did because, like, the first movie came out, and then people learned that movie kind of exploded, and then people learned it was a book series, and so I think a lot of people just like skipped book one and just went straight to book two because the popularity of the series exploded after the first movie came out.
Well, I can at least get hipster enough to say I read the books before the movies came out, but that's about it. But let's see here. What are some other Game of Thrones? Obviously, yada yada. No, Red Rising was a book a series I really enjoyed. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. And The Name of the Wind.
I'm familiar with that one.
Name of the Wind is by Patrick Rothfuss.
Oh, that's where I've heard that from.
So
I haven't read any Rothfuss books myself, but Peter S. Beagle said that he's like very familiar with Rothfuss as an author and as a person. I actually like because I interviewed Peter S. Beagle once, and like one of the things that he was talk that was a bit of a learning moment for me in terms of just the diversity of ways that you can create something is that Peter S. Beagle says that when he writes, he kind of just writes from the heart and from the gut. Like he'll just start and he'll just keep going and just until he reaches the end, and he doesn't know where the story is going as he's writing it. He just keeps writing it and like takes it to where it seems to make sense to him, and then stops at a place where it makes sense to him. And then once he's got that completed story down, then he goes back and he sees if it would make sense to other people. And if it doesn't make sense to other people, then he kind of like tweaks it so that it makes more sense. But he doesn't like, meticulously plan and edit everything. But he was telling me that Patrick Rothfuss is like the complete opposite of what he does. And Patrick Rothfuss like meticulously plans out every single detail. And Patrick Rothfuss will often have like an entire document of notes and backstory that is actually longer than the finished novel that he's written it for. Yeah.
That sounds like another favorite author of mine. Let's see, The Stupidest Angel.
Actually, that might have not been what Peter S. Beagle told me. I think Peter S. Beagle just told me that Patrick Rothfuss tends to plan out everything meticulously, and it was somebody else who told me that his book of notes ends up becoming longer than the actual book.
Nice. But no, Christopher Moore wrote The Stupidest Angel, and he does something very similar. He will plan out a book in high detail, then for one weekend, just one weekend, puts together like 24 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, checks into a hotel, locks the door, unplugs the TV, and just starts writing. And for like 2 days, he's fully sequestered, just writing. And somehow he produces an entire book because he's planned it so agonizingly beforehand. I think this is the debate of the pants versus the planned versus pants. Pants being flying by the seat of.
Right, yeah.
So let's see. So what did I say? The Stupidest Angel, Red Rising series. Trying to think if there's another one that just really. Okay, when I was a kid, what really got me into reading was not any great classic. It was Star Wars Expanded Universe. And the first ones I read were the Young Jedi Knights. And so I'll always remember.
Oh, I think. Did I actually read those? Hold on, let me just see. Because there was one expanded Star Wars book series that somebody gave me when I was a kid that I did read. I don't know if it was Young Jedi Knights. No, it wasn't them.
Well, I'd read the series, so I was enjoying it. I liked the characters. But when they had like the conclusion of what you might call a season, they'd been building up, and here it was this Shadow Academy of future Sith was attacking the Jedi Academy built by Luke Skywalker, and I sat down and I sat in my bed one night. I was like in the sixth grade, maybe a little old, just a little older, and I was like, okay, I'll read a couple chapters, and before I knew it, I'd finished the whole book, and it was way past time to fall asleep for school. But screw it, I was a kid, I could do that. And I just remember that was probably the first time a book captivated me so. So that remains one of my favorites, even if you can throw any number of criticisms at the expanded universe. As one friend derides it as glorified fan fiction. Which that I guess.
I mean, it probably is. That's probably an accurate description.
Mm.
But like people have asked me to review fan fiction, but like I don't care about fan fiction. So I feel like if I did that, I would just be fabricating outrage for clicks, which just kind of is not appealing to me, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Because I made one seriously negative video at all on YouTube, like one where I was just like relentlessly just, bashing a book that I hated. And it was the Ancient Solitary Reign video, which has a absolutely fantastic sequence at the end made by Anthony. It is the best part of the video, and I didn't even make it. Um, but like the reason I made that video is because I had like energy for it. Like I genuinely hated that novel. Like I wasn't just fabricating the hate so that, nostalgia critic style so that I could have material for a negative video. Like I was writing the script going like, yeah, yeah, because it was a novel that had genuinely like made me mad. But people have since that video asked me to do book burnings on other books and also on fan fiction. But uh, my whole thing with fan fiction though is that like it's not. I don't care because it's not being sold for money usually. Like if a book is genuinely bad and it's being sold for money, then I can be like, all right, I have some things to say about this. But if it's like if all that happens in a book or with a book or fan fiction is that somebody has published it online and maybe it's bad, maybe it's even like worse than the worst novels you can think of, but like it's just somebody just writing their own thing and posting it somewhere online for themselves and for anyone else who's interested in. Knock yourself out. I don't care. You know, do what makes you happy. You know what I mean?
I get you. I've done one fandom project review of Princess Trixie Sparkle, and I'd like to do some more stuff. But yeah, the thing is that fan fiction, often I view it as sort of the way you cut your teeth on writing before you maybe tackle something more serious or something more original. You play in someone else's world so that you can learn to make your own. And sometimes people, and don't get me wrong, there are some really well written stories out there under the genre of fan fiction. But then there's also some stuff that's just not really worth your time. I think it's okay to
Yeah,
say
but
why I'm for or against a certain story, but I never want to discourage people from being creative.
sure, but like a lot of it is just does depend on like the context of when and how it was written. So like if so like my whole thing is the reason why I can't bring myself to be angry, genuinely angry at fan fiction is because, fan fiction is usually written by writers as practice. Like imagine going to you know, a high school dance concert or something, and you go there for some reason expecting like professional level, um, you know, world class ballet, and you go on a rant at these high schoolers about how their ballet didn't stack up to the world class, ballet troops that you're used to seeing. That would make you a pretty disingenuous, like just downright mean sort of person, right?
Mm.
So that's kind of how I feel if I were to like take on fan fiction on my channel. It would feel like I'm going into a space where people are genuinely using that space to practice writing, um, and just rubbishing them for daring to practice. And like most of the time, they know they're not good, everyone knows they're not like, world class, you know, Pulitzer Prize quality material, but nobody's expecting them to like win the Pulitzer Prize or anything. It you know it's it is, practice, and it's like, why would you judge that as harshly as you judge a Pulitzer Prize winning novel?
Although there are times where the lines blur. A friend of mine who's trying to encourage my writing once upon a time said, "Oh, I just learned about this fan fiction that is actually becoming its own series." It's like, "Whoa, what's that?" It's called 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh
I
my god, I dodged a bullet when I was in a bookstore once because I was perusing the bookstore and saw the bestseller shelf and saw 50 Shades of Grey, and I was like, that is a book I've never seen before by an author I've never seen before, and yet it's on the bestsellers. That's a little bit odd. Read the blurb. My genuine thought at that moment was, this seems kind of like Twilight, but substantive. And I almost bought it out of curiosity, but I thought to myself, wait, let's look online and see what this book is about first. And that thought dodged me a bullet because I was just like, well, I'm not reading this.
you're fortunate. I think my literary freebie, when I was working at a station, we were doing a very brief story on the Left Behind series and a video game.